Patty Hearst was an heiress who became famous for a chilling reason. In 1974, when she was 19, she was kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army. Then she shocked the world by seemingly joining their ranks. But what happened at her trial was the greatest twist of all. Born in 1954, Patricia Hearst grew up with 4 sisters, but despite not being the only heiress, she would become the most well-known. As with most children of prominent families, she spent her formative years in private schools. After graduation, she attended 2 post-secondary institutions, Menlo College and the University of California, Berkeley. Since high school, she'd been seeing the older Stephen Weed, to whom she became engaged in 1973. At that point, she wasn't the most famous Hearst, at least not yet. Stretching back to the 19th century, the Hearst family's wealth had been built by Patty's grandfather, William Randolph Hearst. Ironically, considering her future infamy, William made his fortune by creating one of the largest media companies in history, known for its sensationalist tabloid stories. Aside from wielding a strong financial influence, the Hearst family was a force to be reckoned with in American politics. William involved himself in the inner workings of the government for much of his life, even running for president in 1904. Despite suffering a heavy hit during the Great Depression, he still commanded significant authority. On February 4th, 1974, Patricia Hearst and Stephen Weed were surprised by a knock at the door. Opening it, they found a young woman who asked for a phone because she'd crashed her car. Lowering their guard, the couple were powerless to stop 2 other intruders from pushing their way in. 2 men forced their way inside the apartment and lunged at Stephen. They pushed the unsuspecting student to the ground and beat him, giving him the impression that they were thieves. In reality, they'd come for Patricia. Her kidnappers hadn't chosen her without reason, nor were they just kidnappers. They were part of the Symbionese Liberation Army, a band of radical domestic terrorists intent on dismantling US capitalism. Under the leadership of escaped convict Donald DeFreeze, they committed many vicious acts, including the abduction of Patricia. The SLA had kidnapped Patricia, but for her family over the next couple of days, it was like she'd disappeared off the face of the earth. The group didn't contact the Hearsts for 2 days, during which, and after, Patricia's parents set up press conferences outside their home in a desperate attempt to plead with her kidnappers.
There's been a big kidnapping on the West Coast. The victim is Patricia Hearst, the daughter of newspaper executive Randolph Hearst.
According to later statements by Patricia, when the SLA first took her, they held her blindfolded and restrained in a closet for weeks. Rather than treat her with any modicum of respect or compassion, they kept her in a state of fear, with their leader continuously threatening her life. Eventually, Patricia's captors loosened the reins a bit, but only to further their agenda. They started letting her out of her closet to eat and engage in political discussions. To ingrain their message more, they provided her a flashlight to read and forced her to commit their propaganda to memory. After her first 48 hours of captivity, the SLA made their intentions public. As she was from the powerful Hearst family, DeFreeze had hoped to secure the release of 2 SLA members, using Patricia for ransom. However, when the Hearsts' influence proved insufficient in getting the state's cooperation, the SLA made new demands. Instead, they wanted the family to deliver $70 worth of food to each of the impoverished citizens of California. Patricia's father, Randolph Apperson Hearst, may have been an heir to the family fortune, but that didn't mean he had access to it. His father had retained full control of the funds to protect them, but even so, Randolph took out a loan and arranged the People in Need project to give food to those less fortunate, as demanded. This was ultimately a disaster, devolving into a riot that ended the project before they completed the requested goal. Unsatisfied with the Hearst attempt, the SLA refused to release Patricia. The group continued to indoctrinate her, telling her that her family never cared about her and that the group's goals were for the greater good. The SLA then gave Patricia the seemingly fair choice of being released unharmed or joining their fight. She chose to stay with her captors. Now that she had decided to join the SLA as an official member, they continued moulding her into a domestic terrorist. Any family or friends who held out hope that Patricia would return were in for a rude awakening in April 1974 when she addressed the public herself. After holding her captive for 2 months, the SLA released an audio tape featuring Patricia's statement, saying she joined the group and taken the name Tanya. Over a week later, Patricia's involvement in the SLA's activities became confirmed when the group held up a bank on April 15th, and authorities saw security footage of her participating. From the Hibernia Bank in San Francisco, the video showed her waving around an automatic weapon and ordering the people inside to stay down. Surprisingly, the public opinion was split. Many young people belonging to the counterculture movement saw Patricia as a hero. Of course, most older Americans did not. A month after her first recorded act as an SLA guerrilla, Patricia was spotted during another theft. On May 16th, she was sitting in a van outside a Los Angeles store, waiting for 2 fellow SLA members to come out. When they did, and the owner followed to confront them, Patricia opened fire and allowed her partners to escape. They chose not to return to their base in LA after learning that authorities had it surrounded. On May 17th, a firefight erupted at the group's base that lasted for hours, resulting in the deaths of 2 SLA members. Donald DeFries also took his own life, and a fire started that killed the rest of the members inside. After this, Patricia once again addressed the masses. As a direct response to the event, she spoke about her feelings for one of the fallen members, William Wolfe, whom others said she was in a relationship with. Over the next year, Patricia continued to serve the SLA cause with the other surviving members. This included making improvised explosives for strikes against the authorities, and acting as a getaway driver for at least one other theft. Finally, the FBI caught up. Patricia's time on the run ended on September 18, 1975, when law enforcement found her rooming with another member named Wendy Yoshimura in San Francisco. While her roommate surrendered immediately, Patricia retreated to another room, at least until the authorities threatened Wendy's life and forced Patricia back out. As she surrendered, her loyalty to the SLA remained unwavering. Along with asking her attorney to relay a message to the public telling her sisters and brothers that she felt free and strong, she referred to her occupation as being an urban guerrilla when giving her information. Her time with the SLA had left her a shell of her former self. Having dropped in weight to 87 pounds, she was now a heavy smoker, and her mind had clearly suffered from the experience. Not only was she missing large chunks of her memory, but doctors found that her IQ had lowered significantly. Patricia spent the next few weeks in custody relaying her experience to her lawyers, the authorities, and several doctors. Over this time, she got some distance from the guerrilla world that had engulfed her, and she eventually walked back on her beliefs, renouncing the SLA and its actions. Patricia spoke to multiple people about her SLA activities, but this was initially against her counsel's suggestion. Terence Hallinan, the lawyer her family hired first, advised her to stay silent as he developed his case. He argued that she was not fully responsible for her actions since, as he postulated, the group had forcibly inebriated her with illicit substances. Unlike the claims of her defence, many thought Patricia was wholly responsible for her actions, including prosecutor James L. Browning Jr. He believed that she may have voluntarily held up the Hibernia Bank, refuting her claims of being a reluctant participant. Nearly 2 years after her initial kidnapping, Patricia Hearst appeared in court to answer for her crimes with the SLA. She was brought before a judge as the sole perpetrator on trial for the bank theft. In line with her counsel's plan, Patricia stuck with her coercion defence. She testified that her captors ordered her to appear enthusiastic and do everything they instructed. The bank's surveillance footage supported this and seemed to show the other SLA members threatening Patricia at gunpoint. To ascertain the truth of Patricia's claims, the prosecution had arranged for several doctors to examine her. One of them testified that her involvement in the bank theft had been nothing other than an act of free will, claiming that she was merely a rebel in search of a cause. Concerning Patricia's claims that both Donald DeFreeze and William Wolfe had forced themselves on her, another psychiatrist called by the prosecution stated she engaged in these acts voluntarily and called her amoral. Even the judge seemed biased against Patricia. For instance, he permitted the jury to hear an earlier recording of her proclaiming her radical beliefs to a visiting friend while incarcerated. But despite the prosecution calling on several doctors, he wouldn't allow interviews between her and a psychiatrist to be used as evidence in her defence. After a ruthless and grueling trial, the judge made his final decision on the fate of Patricia. Charging her with 2 convictions for her involvement in the bank theft and the hold-up at the LA store, he sentenced her to the maximum of 35 years imprisonment. This would likely lessen at the following final sentence hearing, but the judge didn't define by what amount. As it happened, the judge, Oliver Jesse Carter, died suddenly before the final hearing, and the new judge, William H. Orrick Jr., sentenced her to 7 years incarceration instead in September 1976. 2 months after her sentencing, Patricia received some good news. Whilst waiting to appear for an appeal hearing, the court granted her bail, as long as she received protection while she was out. In 1978, her appeal failed as the Supreme Court refused to hear her case. As a result, the courts revoked her bail and Patricia resigned herself to serving her time. However, she would gain her freedom sooner than expected. On February 1st, 1979, a higher authority became involved. President Jimmy Carter commuted her sentence to the 22 months she'd already served, albeit still under probation and with strict stipulations. Now, in the aftermath of this turbulent chapter in her life, she wanted to tell her story. Having put the chaos of her SLA involvement behind her, Patricia was intent on setting the record straight. In 1981, she released her memoir titled Every Secret Thing, co-written by author Alvin Moscow. In this memoir, she revealed details that hadn't previously been known to the public, and even renewed the interest of the authorities. However, she was never charged again, and eventually had her name cleared. Due to her precarious release and the publishing of her memoir, Patricia was still considered of interest to the authorities, at least until 2001. On January 20th that year, President Bill Clinton pardoned her of all offences on his last day in office. Amid all this, she was able to find happiness. Patricia never got back together with her former fiancé, but she did find someone else. Just 2 months following her release, she married one of the officers who'd protected her while on bail, Bernard Lee Shaw. With him, she would later give birth to 2 children. Along with a family, she found a new calling as well. In a strange twist of fate, Patricia continued her stay in the spotlight when one man took a chance on her. Director John Waters decided to cast her in his 1990 film Crybaby, and she caught the acting bug, appearing in 7 more movies and several TV shows. Still, she never forgot those who spoke against her. Patricia's story remained relevant in America, and in 2009 she sat for an interview on NBC about her life. During the interview, she spoke about the court proceedings, especially the court's attitude. Calling the prosecutor out, she referred to his assertion of a consensual relationship between her and William Wolfe as outrageous and offensive to victims of similar crimes. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. If you want a say in who we cover next, join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.